Good afternoon, everyone. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Buenas tardes, Asante Sana, and welcome to HRH House, our 2018 annual meeting, and to celebrate International Christian Science Nursing Days. Today is a day of discovery, inspiration, and healing. For the past couple of years, we have been working on a sense of renewal for HRH House. Right after last year's annual meeting, a Christian Science nurse who was in the audience, who had left nursing, heard the call to return to nursing, and she has since been working for us. Mrs. Eddy has said, philanthropy is loving, ameliorative, revolutionary. It wakens lofty desires, new possibilities, achievements, and energies. We are learning that philanthropy is the practice of Christian science and healing in the human experience. For example, without any additional funding, last year we started our Day Guest program, where we bring individuals from Manhattan and nearby areas for a day of spiritual study, lunch, and a testimony meeting. It is bringing healing and blessings to those who are isolated in their homes and to those who otherwise cannot go out on their own. This program is providing needed companionship, fellowship, and disciplined study. As one of our regular guests notes, and I quote, "This is the highlight of my week. I feel so much love when I come here." And what happens when we extend the borders of our tent and share our love with others? We were bountifully blessed. Last year, we shared with you the financial challenge we faced when Medicare withheld $800,000 from HRH House pending our appeal. In order to meet our immediate needs, we reported to you that we had to obtain a $500,000 short-term loan. Well, a wonderful thing happened. The remaining balance of that 5-year loan has now been completely forgiven. Another wonderful thing happened. 2 other older loans that we've had were also forgiven. These are blessings that have been from expected sources of good, but unexpected just because we shared our love with the community. During these times of crisis and challenge, you all came to our rescue to overcome the seeming threat to our existence. Gifts from the community increased, and last year was the biggest year ever. Congratulate yourselves for playing a big part in these wonderful demonstrations, and we thank you with all our hearts. So let's give everyone a big round of applause. Another wonderful blessing. HRH House has been privileged to play a role in being a thought leader in the national and international arena for the field of Christian Science nursing. HRH House obtained the Vice President's seat on the Executive Committee of the Association for Organizations for Christian Science Nursing. In addition, our trustee, Marilyn Bradshaw, serves on the Trustees Committee. What does this all mean? At the AOCSN, we represent you and the interests and concerns of the tri-state communities for Christian Science nursing. In addition, we were invited to a 2-day meeting with the Christian Science Board of Directors last November to consider the challenges to and opportunities for Christian Science nursing. And this is one of the questions that I raised that I thought we should all be considering. Can we envision the day when we will not have to charge our patients for our services? Can we all envision that? Can we sustain ourselves and not rely on Medicare and private insurance, most of which do not pay for Christian Science treatment? I invite you all to really prayerfully consider these challenges we have right now, and for us to have that ever-expanding vision for our movement. Another exciting development is that all the leadership groups working on Christian Science nursing, AOCSN, Christian Science Nursing Network, the Network for All Christian Science Nurses, the Philanthropy Forum, the groups that fund all of Christian Science nursing, and the Mother Church have now formed a collaborative working group to jointly work together. So no more silos, but work towards successful collaboration and healing. There are serious issues we all need to tackle. For example, during a recent survey of Christian Science nurses, it was found that 50% are of retirement age. Who will replace those dear, dedicated nurses? A big percentage earn low wages for this very important ministry. And for certain cities, they earn just as much as McDonald's workers. That is really sad. Benevolence is also very much needed. For the past year, patients needed, in HRH House alone, $300,000 in financial assistance. These issues are challenges to our healing ministry, and I ask you to include them in your prayer agenda and join us in praying to help address them. We are your partners for healing. Christian Science is not only curative, but preventative. Call upon us early. Come visit for the day, or come stay for a week. Sometimes all that is needed is a change in the thought environment for that healing to be experienced. We have had to get patients released from hospitals and other medical centers to bring them to HRH House and to return to their first love, Christian Science healing. We are there for you, no matter where you are. But we will not rest. The continuing encroachment of materia medica, big pharma, the medical industrial complex, is pervasive in our lives. We don't want to be adversarial, but we do want to be very alert. We will call upon every tool and weapon of spirit to heal those seeming inveterate conditions, and thus proving, and I quote from the manual, all that we claim this science to be. And Mrs. Eddy has said, "Now, will you rouse yourselves? You have all the power of God with you to conquer this lie of mesmerism. The workers in the field are not healing because they are not meeting animal magnetism, which says they cannot heal." Well, today is a celebration of our hard-won victories. Each of us has had the occasion and privilege to prove the efficacy of Christian Science healing. Christian Science nursing is so needed. Hence, our expanded theme this year, Nursing Ourselves, Our Churches, and Our World. International Christian Science Nursing Days is going on right now and tomorrow in over 50 countries around the globe. 50 different events and several countries. I'm sorry, I didn't count them, but I have the list right there at the table. We honor the unsung heroes of our movement, our Christian Science nurses. Will each Christian Science nurse in this room, whether you are in the journal or not, please stand. Friends, thank you. Friends, these are the people who are caring for you and for our brothers and sisters. We honor you and we thank you for your selfless service to humanity. And now, since we're celebrating in an international way, I would like to go back to the wisdom of the Hopi elders and recite a poem. You have been telling the people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell the people that this is the hour. There are many things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relation? It is time to speak truth. Create your community. Be good to each other, and do not look outside yourself for the leader. There is a river flowing, now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. Know that the river has its own destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above the water. See who is in there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle in your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we've been waiting for to nurse ourselves, our churches, and our world. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody. And isn't this a wonderful day? And the weather has been so accommodating for us all. And what a great day to celebrate HRH House and the International Christian Science Nursing Days. And I'm Fran Hall, and I'm president of the Board of Trustees. Our leader, Mary Baker Eddy, assures us progress is born of experience. It has been a time of continued progress here at HRH House, progress that has grown from some challenging experiences. Some remain works in progress, but we also have had some victories. Victory number 1, Medicare appeal. We are happy to report that we've reached a resolution with Medicare regarding our 2010 cost report. Note, that's 2010 cost report. As you may recall, we were required to make a substantial payment to Medicare in excess of $300,000, drawing way down on our reserves. Our Medicare settlement returned over $400,000 to us, and that enables us to replenish our badly depleted reserve funds. These funds represent not only a resolution of our dispute, but also additional monies that were withheld from us over the many months this process included. Victory number 2. Another victory for the Christian Science field is the creation of the National Fund for Christian Science Nursing. The National Fund is a benevolence fund that can assist Christian Science nursing patients in the United States and its territories. The fund can help in any situation where a Christian Science nurse is needed, including in-home care and facility care. Together with High Oaks and Dominion Foundations, we are so grateful for these organizations that help Christian Scientists support one another. And what a blessing they are. So let us all include them in our choice for charitable giving. Very, very important to do. Nursing HRH House. Hymn number 105 begins with this sweet prayer. Help us to help each other, Lord, each other's cross to bear. Our metaphysical theme last year was nursing ourselves, nursing our churches. We want to express our great gratitude for the substantial report we received from the tri-state churches. We so appreciate the generous response from the field that enabled us to stay afloat despite that major challenge to our financial stability. You, our fellow church members, have also nursed us, and you continue to do so. Partnership and progress. For an institution such as HRH House, there are a broad variety of best business practices and protocols that can help an organization run smoothly, that serve to support the regular operation of daily business. These do not, however, in and of themselves, bring healing. Christian Science nursing requires skills that are above human best practices. For that reason, we have taken initial steps to implement a continuing education program at HRH House. In partnership with our sister facility, Fern Lodge in California, during these past few months, 2 of our senior nurses and our executive director, Maravik Mabanig, have been working with Sharon Strong, Director of Christian Science Nurses Training. To show the dedication of our staff, the classes were nightly, 4 days a week, and started at 9:30. They ran for an hour, followed by extensive homework assignments. This came after they had worked all day or were going to work all night on the night shift. Some of the topics covered were how to keep Christian Science nursing fresh, leading versus managing. For continued progress, we ask you to join us in praying about the current shortage of Christian Science nurses worldwide. For HRH House, we are working to establish a more permanent nursing staff. But in the meantime, we are so grateful for the nurses who fly from all over the United States to spend a few weeks with us. Our appreciation for each of you. Every day, we are grateful for your prayers and financial support. HRH House exists because each of you provides such an important avenue of support. Each of you are wonderful donors. You help make it all happen. Your support is used for our benevolence grants to patients, to pay salaries, and the various demands of building upkeep. We trust you saw our new blacktop driveway, a long-desired project to maintain safety and convenience on our property. Every dollar is a gift. Every dollar counts. There is no such thing as a small donation. With all of your financial support, as Maravik alluded to, our finances are in the most stable condition that HRH House has seen in many, many years. We so appreciate each one of you. In closing, let me take a moment to introduce my fellow board members. They individually and together help ensure proper stewardship and support for our entire organization. And would each one of you please stand as I say your name? Marilyn Bradshaw. And just hold your applause, and we'll give them all applause at the end. Marilyn serves as our vice president and our secretary. Barbara Burley. Candace Cunaberti, and Candace is our treasurer. And Thorin Washington, who cannot be with us here today, but sends his love. It is a small but mighty band of dedicated workers who unselfishly labor on behalf of HRH House and its healing ministry. Please join me in giving them your hearty applause for all they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. Well, this part is a little surprise for the trustees and a former trustee. There are over 30 million men and women in this country who serve on the board of a nonprofit. These are to our trustees, just like you. You join a dedicated legion on a shared journey, engaged in noble and heroic causes that touch lives in a very special way. Because of your service, you play a significant role in changing lives and in saving lives. What could possibly be more rewarding, more exciting? Trustee is an excellent word for a board member. That's because you are charged with keeping in trust the fate and fortune of our organization. You are the future. You are the organization's destiny. Trusteeship implies a public faith in you as a guardian, someone in whose care the welfare and growth of the organization is entrusted. That's an awesome responsibility. You're willing to settle for less than the very best and the highest quality in all the organization does. You join other trustees in the same demanding test. You give your time and talent, and yes, your treasure. You give your heart and soul to your trusteeship and the organization in your own special way. You are changing a corner of the world. You make it happen. This is from Gerald Panas, one of the people I admire in this world. But today, we want to honor someone who has served our Board of Trustees for many, many years, Mr. John Ingersoll. Please. Thank you so much for your dedication and love and stewardship of HRH House over the last several years. Thank you, John. And now we are all in for a treat. This is a day of discovery and understanding of Christian Science, nursing a healing ministry. So may I please call on our nurses who will be on our panel. Thank you, Julia. All right, before you today is a wonderful panel of Christian Science nurses who have varying levels of experience, but together we have over 75 years of Christian Science nursing among themselves. I will introduce them. First, we have Judy Elmgren, then Scott Higgins, Daniel Nabiswa, Rose Mudida, and Emmanuel Kalyankar. Okay, each one will share with how each of them was led into Christian Science nursing. So I will start with Judy.
I hope you don't mind that I'm going to read.
I have to mention that Judy did the night service, night nurse last night, so she told me to tell you all that be aware, but she's been such a trooper. Thank you so much for being part of the program.
You're welcome. I've been raised in Christian Science. I've been a member of the Mother Church since I'm 12. Of course, I attended the Sunday school. But I had just graduated from high school and was engaged to be married. I wasn't really sure if this was the direction I should be taking, though. I read a Christian Science Sentinel, and in it was an article on Christian Science nursing. I immediately knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a Christian Science nurse. I broke off my engagement in August. In September, my mom and I found ourselves sitting in a nurse's aide class at HRH House. We both completed our 3-year training course, and we were listed in the Christian Science Journal. That was 40 years ago.
I had been studying Christian Science for a couple of months in California and volunteering at Fern Lodge, reading to patients. And one day they needed somebody in the kitchen, so I started in the kitchen. I worked in housekeeping for a while. And all through this, I was so inspired by the gentle, joyous, healing love that the nurses expressed toward the patients in very challenging situations, and the healing effect that that had. And I was so inspired that I decided to sign up for the training.
So okay. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
All right. I'm originally from Kenya. So in the year 2008, that is in the summer of 2008, I came into the United States as an international student. So I went to Principia College for 4 years. And so a year after that, that was in the summer of 2009, the school hosted a job fair. And so we had representatives from all over the country coming to the school to talk about Christian Science nursing, and I attended one of those sessions. And so it was during that time that I met a representative who was talking about Christian Science nursing. And I was interested in finding out more about it, so I applied. And as you can see, I ended up being a nurse. And I've been committed ever since. Thank you.
I'm gonna read mine, and I'm also from Kenya. I was motivated to learn more about Christian Science nursing after my first healing, which took place in Kenya. My body ached, and it was extremely painful. At this point, I couldn't do much for myself except lie down. My sister happened to be visiting me. She didn't say anything except she picked up the book, Science and Health. She opened it and read it out loud from the chapter on prayer. I listened instantly, and though I wasn't understanding the message, I was grateful for her thoughtful, loving concern. She read about 2 pages from Science and Health. As she was reading, I felt at peace. The pain vanished. I remember shouting, saying, "Wow, that book just healed me." "That's incredulous," my sister responded. Then I responded saying, "God just proved to me that Science and Health is not just a book, but the truth, the Word of God." Even though I didn't understand the words, love met my needs promptly. After this wonderful quick healing, I read in the journal, Christian Science journal, that Christian Science nurses were needed at Daystar in Florida. I decided to apply. My application was accepted. All I needed was R1 visa. At this point, I did not know much about Christian Science nursing. I thought it was just a job, and I was thrilled to have been accepted. When I went to the US Embassy, I was given an interview, but I was denied a visa. I was told to go and come back in a year. I went back after a year, but then again, I was turned down. At this point, I said, God, I leave everything in your hand. Not my will, but thine be done. I knew I had to change my thought from human wants to God's wants. I remember saying, God, if this is my calling, let it be so. I waited for another year. When I went for the usual interview, I was so surprised when I was not even asked one question, but was told to come back at 2 p.m. I went back at 2 p.m. and I received the visa. That was 20 years ago. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel Jack. I'm from India. Few years ago, while still living in India, my uncle introduced me to Christian Science nurse, Christian Science, and he brought me to church. He presented me with the book Science and Health. It is not just a book for me, it is a spiritual tool for my spiritual growth. I read, I learn how to overcome mortal mind by understanding immortal mind. Last year, I attended a Christian Science nursing workshop. It helped provide me with the most basic Christian Science nursing skills. In my heart, I pray about I want to become a Christian Science nurse. Few months back, I attended the HRH picnic, and I mentioned to the executive director Marvick that I am praying to be a Christian Science nurse. Marvick said to me, just pray and God will give an answer to you. I prayed with a humble heart. A couple of weeks later, God gave me an answer, and now I am I'm a new Christian Science nurse. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy, you are the veteran in the group. How has the Ministry of Christian Science Nursing changed? And do you miss anything about the good old days? And then what about Christian Science nursing still excites you and inspires you these days?
Okay. First of all, we don't wear white uniforms anymore. Second, I think that the facilities are more homey. They are more relaxed. And I think third, we're getting a lot of people coming in from other countries into nursing. It's more international, and I just think that's great. I don't really miss anything from the past. I just live right now, moment by moment. And I love nursing. I love it just as much now as I did 40 years ago.
Amazing. Wow. Judy's an inspiration. Okay, Emmanuel, you are the newbie in the group. He's only been nursing for 2 months. What has been your biggest joy and your biggest surprise when you started this ministry 2 months ago?
I am now in a Christian Science nursing family. That is the biggest joy and the biggest surprise is by the grace of God. I successfully finished my first 2 months of nursing. That is my biggest joy.
Scott, I think it is fascinating that someone who was a medical nurse decided to become a Christian Science nurse. For those of you who don't know, HRH House is considered a religious, non-medical healthcare institution. So this is so fascinating to me that somebody who was in the medical field, like Scott, is now one of our senior nurses. Can you share with us what your turning point was, Scott?
I got into medical nursing, like many people, with a desire to help and heal. But the turning point for me was the professional and legal requirement of medical nurses to educate patients regarding disease and medicine. And I saw, because I had contact with many Christian scientists, especially the way Christian scientists have educated their children, how that educational system prevented disease. And so it really became intolerable for me to be required to teach people about disease. And so I've always appreciated, Mrs. Eddy in Science and Health refers to medicine as one of the modes of thought that need to be leavened. And I saw that my part in that leavening would be the right way for me to do it would be as a Christian Science nurse.
Now I'm going to ask the panelists. One of the most important things is about preparing your thought before you enter a patient's room. So let's start with you, Daniel. How do you start your day metaphysically before you enter a patient's room?
Well, for me, the most important thing that I begin with is through prayer. I pray in the morning about the day, and then I read a citation from either the Bible or some of the writings of Mary Baker Eddy, and I find those citations, whichever I choose for the day, to be very helpful, because you want to have an uplifted thought when you enter into a patient's room.
Emmanuel?
I started my work with love, with a heart full of prayer for me and the patients. I prepare my thoughts to witness the every presence of Christ with patient, and I strive to practice Christly quality of love. Thus I start my work.
Thank you. Rose?
I start my day by daily treatment in the morning. I have to treat myself daily. Then I pray for myself and the world and my ministry. I also give thanks to God for giving me that opportunity to at least wake up and be at my workplace, which is HRH House. So, and then after that, I have to study my Bible lesson, which is the truth. It is my spiritual food. You know, it is what governs our movement. And throughout that, I am always inspired by songs, hymns. So HRH House happened to have 24/7 PM system, and we have hymns goes on 24/7. We have hymns, songs and health, and we have Bible lesson. If you don't get to do your work well, trying to rush to work in the morning, I found that very helpful at HRH House. It's on PM, so every time I'm in patient's room, I turn it on. It doesn't only, support my ministry, but it supports patients' environment, and also the movement has all. So in general, that has been my spiritual food on my daily basis of my ministry. Thank you.
How about you, Scott?
I begin by locating myself right here, right now, at home in the kingdom of God. And I love the Bible, Science and Health, the Bible lesson, and also moment by moment treating whatever comes to thought, treating and witnessing the omnipresence of love.
I often pray to God to enable me to see His spiritual ideas the way He sees them. I pray for harmony and peace. I pray that I will bring into the rooms what is needed at the time and to express each of the nursing qualities that is expected of the Christian Science nurse.
I have one other question and maybe two more coming up. How has your Christian Science nursing ministry changed you as a metaphysician? Who wants to go first?
I'll go. I have learned to listen, to be patient, and not to be discouraged, but to pray and trust in God.
I realized early on that deep study and prayer heals, protects, and is essential to one's spiritual well-being.
Emmanuel?
Yes. This ministry is changing me to develop a strong understanding of God and Christian Science. Also, it is make me commitment future to the gospel of Christ healing. Thank you.
Well, the first quality Mrs. Eddy lists for a Christian Science nurse, for a nurse in Science and Health, is cheerful. And the first requirement in the manual for Christian Science nurse is a demonstrable knowledge of Christian Science Christian Science practice. And so I really discipline myself to maintain that sense of joy which has a spiritual basis, a spiritual foundation. And having the privilege of working with patients who are going through whatever challenges really causes me to exercise that discipline and to grow in it.
I may add that Scott sometimes, after a night of working, he will come to the morning meeting and get us all to sing together with one of our staff, Cecilia. So that's so wonderful when we do our prayer agenda. Rose?
Christian Science nursing, it has given me courage, confidence in responding without fear to any situation because I trust that every move I make is from divine mind. Proverbs 3:5-6. We read, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path."
Okay, to close, can you share one word or phrase as a message to someone out here in our audience who may be considering entering Christian Science nursing? One word or phrase.
Christian Science nursing is love in action.
Rejoice in God always, and again I say rejoice.
Divine love heals all the time.
Christian Science nursing is a ministry serving God and mankind.
Christian Science nursing is a joyful moment of thought.
Right. Thank you so much. Let's give them a big round of applause. Please feel free to meet any of them afterwards. And now we will, Rose and Scott will stay. We will now share with you, let's give everybody a chance to step down. Francie. And we will now share with you various testimonies of healing that we have experienced here at HRH House. The first ones that I'm going to have them start with, Francie, please, is what we call, as Scott alluded, the demonstrable knowledge of Christian Science practice, one of the main cores of Christian Science nursing. But what we're going to share with you is the healing outcome of the Christian Science nurses' application of that demonstrable knowledge of Christian Science nursing. So Scott, could you introduce that to us?
Yes. As Mrs. Eddy says, Christian Science is both therapeutic and prophylactic, preventive and curative. For over 10 years, I'm grateful for while working at HRH House as a Christian Science nurse, I've never missed a day of work due to illness. There was a patient who would shout out constantly for long periods of time, both when alone and when necessary care was given. Despite repeated efforts to discern if there was a specific need and calls to her Christian Science practitioner, the patient would give no clue about a specific need. I noticed as I worked with her, the shout was the first syllable of hallelujah. Witnessing one omnipresent, omniactive mind, I reasoned that all that could really be occurring is one mind rejoicing in itself and its perfect expression. When she would start, I would join in with her by exclaiming, hallelujah. Soon she also was exclaiming hallelujah. And in addition, she was able to more frequently articulate what her specific needs were. Later, a maintenance worker told me that he went into her room one day and all of a sudden she shouted hallelujah.
Rose?
No matter what shift I work, I always start my day with metaphysical preparation. A number of years ago, I was on the morning shift. The shift began as a quiet and harmonious morning. I visited each patient I was assigned to and met their needs by seeing perfect God, perfect man. Christian Science nurses are assigned to specific patients according to the amount of training and experience they have had. This morning I was assigned to a patient that needed support in everything. I checked on the person, we shared metaphysical ideas, and I attended to her needs. Suddenly, the patient's body started making jerking motions, and the eyes were unfocused, staring. This person appeared to be losing consciousness. Ideas were coming to me to call for another Christian Science nurse to come and help. Although another thought was saying, don't call for help, stay and pray. Immediately, I heard a voice that said to me, you can't leave this patient now, but continue to pray. And I did. I voiced the truth out loud as I was holding the patient in my arms. Every time I prayed aloud, ideas flowed to my thought of what I should do next. I knew that God was communicating with me, directing me throughout every step. I continued in this way, listening to ideas of spiritual intuition. I never felt panicked or worried, but felt embraced in love, which was also embracing the patient with tender, loving care. I prayed the Lord's Prayer and the scientific statement of being. After a short period of time, the patient was demonstrating a greater sense of normalcy. At this point, I heard a voice saying, "Now call the Christian Science practitioner," which I did, and explained exactly what happened. The practitioner thanked me and said, "We'll give prayerful support." After a half an hour, the patient's activities were as if nothing had ever happened. And in reality, it never happened. Error is never real. I love what Mrs. Eddy said in Miscellany, page 210. Beloved Christian scientists, keep your mind so filled with truth and love that sin, disease, and death cannot enter them. It is plain that nothing can be added to the mind already full. There is no door through which evil can enter, and no space for evil to fill in a mind filled with goodness. Good thoughts are an impervious armor. Clad therewith, you are completely shielded from the attacks of error of every sort. And not only yourselves are safe, but all whom your thoughts rest upon are thereby benefited.
Thank you. Now, Francie, Julia, and I will share testimonies of healing written by patients themselves that they have submitted to HRH House. So, Francie, would you start?
So this is in the words of the patient. I had been working through a belief of internal pain for over 2 weeks and had been unable to eat during this time when I called HRH House. I had been vomiting and had no elimination for that time. I had originally called another care facility which was closer to me at the time, but they had no room. 2 visiting Christian Science nurses from Boston were able to come by for a couple of hours, but could not support my needs. A room opened at HRH House, and I was driven down and admitted. The care and staff were amazing. I felt both embraced and loved, as well as the palpable strength of conviction by all staff and Christian Science nurses. They read hymns to me and passages from the Bible and Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. I spent a few nights up in pain, vomiting, and a few days only in bed. But as I felt mentally stronger in my understanding of God, I was able to start taking in drink and eventually food. The vomiting stopped, and I gained the strength to sit upright and walk by myself to the study room. Although the healing from start to finish took a month, in which I have been out of work, I have been so grateful for the opportunity to reset my relationship to God and expand my understanding of science. Many fears of the future and relationship troubles have been put to rest. Thank you so much for everything and everyone. I could not have been in a more amazing place with more loving and wonderful people.
This is a testimony from the daughter of the patient. I am writing with earnest gratitude as a lifelong practicing student of Christian Science and as a humble witness to an extraordinary healing my mother demonstrated while in the care of the stellar nurses at HRH House. The mental atmosphere was palpably calm, and the potency of the truth and its application was a reassuring constant. Mother responded quickly to the encouragement of all and was receptive to the diligent expectation that she would participate in this opportunity for healing. The non-stop administration of adhering to God's law and dominion conveyed to Mother through services, hymns, the lesson read multiple times daily, and by the Christly influence emanated from all the nurses, directed and supported by the director of Christian Science Nursing, whose devoted adherence to the truth engendered such confidence in both mother and myself. The collective mental atmosphere was so potently nourishing, loving, and confident that midway through Mother's stay, she was strolling and enjoying the terraces, attending High Ridge House church services, participating in study groups in the reading room, and joining residents for meals without a trace of a single physical symptom, all which radically contradicted and refuted the hospital doctor's diagnosis of a stroke and his prognosis of her death if medical treatment was refused. The decision was made to move Mother to High Ridge, which would have not been possible without the extraordinary willingness of the executive director, who collaborated from afar with a close family friend of ours in order to aid Mother's hospital release and transfer to High Ridge within 1 day. The robust treatment, loving, confident, and steadfast care quickly translated into an absolute healing. I am profoundly grateful for the care administered and for the unwavering support of the practitioners who give so selflessly to ensure a safe haven where Christian scientists can adhere to the faithful practice of Christian Science with unwavering faith.
And finally, another remarkable healing. I had a beautiful healing at High Ridge House. I was involved in a car accident and was in so much pain and had to have help just to walk. With the help of all the staff there and my practitioner, I was able to leave High Ridge House after 9 days, almost totally walking on my own, and then at home was able to fully walk with the continued treatment of the Christian Science practitioner. This past summer, I was on vacation and I biked many miles and now often walk 7 miles plus. And I can work out again and it feels great. I am so grateful to everyone at High Ridge House. This patient also wanted us to know that for several months, her insurance company did not want to pay High Ridge House. So she said the healing is not complete. The insurance company must pay High Ridge House and my Christian Science practitioner. So I was waiting for her patiently for her testimony, but lo and behold, it is one of the most amazing cases assisted by us by the Christian Science Provider Network that helps facilities get insurance reimbursements. And not only was High Ridge House reimbursed, but they paid the Christian Science practitioner fully. So that was an amazing healing. Thank you all. Please give them another round of applause. And now we are in for a special treat. Many of you know Osceola Davis, a longtime friend and beloved volunteer at High Ridge House, who has been the Mother Church soloist for many years and lives down the street near High Ridge House. So we love her. And so without much further ado, Osceola Davis for her solo. Accompanied by Dottie.
Ain't got time to die, 'cause when I'm healing the sick, I'm praising my Jesus. When I'm healing the sick, ain't got time to die, 'cause 'cause it takes all of my time to praise my Jesus, all of my time to praise my Lord. If I don't praise Him, the rock's gonna cry out, glory and honor, glory and honor. Ain't got time. Lord, I keep so busy working for the kingdom, keep so busy working for the kingdom, keep so busy working for the kingdom, ain't got time. 'Cause when I'm healing the sick, I'm working for the kingdom. Yes, I'm working when I'm feeding the poor. Lord, I ain't got time. 'Cause it takes all of my time to praise my Jesus, all of my time to praise my Lord. If I don't praise Him, the rock's gonna cry out, glory and honor, glory and honor. Ain't got time to die. Lord, I keep so busy serving my master, keep so busy serving my master, keep so busy serving my master, ain't got time. 'Cause when I'm giving my all, I'm serving my master. When I'm giving my all, Lord, I ain't got time. 'Cause it takes all of my time to praise my Jesus, all of my time to praise my Lord. If I don't praise Him, the rock's gonna cry out, glory and honor, glory and honor. Ain't got time. Now won't you get out of my way? Let me praise my Jesus. Get out of my way. If I don't praise Him, the rock's gonna cry out, glory and honor, glory and honor.
Our Lord ain't got time to die. Thank you, Osceola and Dottie. Wonderful. And now, for the moment we've all been waiting for, we have the wonderful opportunity to hear our Christian Science practitioner, Emily Byquist. Her bio is in our program, and we are so privileged to have her here today to share with us Keys to the Kingdom. Emily. There's a lot of love here. Thank you all. Excuse me. Friends, my dear friends, today we're going to talk about something wonderful. We're going to talk about heaven. Now, of course, I don't mean the old notion of heaven with fluffy clouds and angels somewhere up there in the sky. But I mean the kingdom of heaven as we understand it in Christian Science, what Mary Baker Eddy defines as the reign of harmony in divine science, the realm of unerring, eternal, and omnipotent mind, the atmosphere of spirit where soul is supreme. That sounds fabulous, doesn't it? The reign of harmony, the atmosphere of spirit. I'd take that any day over a bunch of fluffy clouds. And in fact, I'm sure you've all had this experience. During the times in my life when I've caught a precious glimpse of that reign of harmony, I've wanted it to last forever. Who wouldn't want to feel that sense of profound, spiritually based peace and well-being all day and every day? But our interest in the kingdom of heaven is about more than just feeling good, because being conscious of the realm of unerring, eternal, and omnipotent mind
is actually why we're here. It's our goal as followers of Christ Jesus and ultimately our purpose as the expression of God. Spirituality, harmony, bliss, that's our birthright and our true state. Our reason for being, our number one priority. Now, Mrs. Eddy says that the grand necessity of existence is to gain the true idea of what constitutes the kingdom of heaven in man. The grand necessity of existence. Again, our number one priority. It can be easy to forget that, to get caught up in our daily tasks and responsibilities and lose sight of that big picture. But the truth is, we're here to see reality, to perceive and experience the kingdom of heaven on earth, right here and right now. So, how do we do that? By reading the lesson and attending church services and faithfully keeping with our daily prayers. Well, perhaps we're already doing all of that, and still our glimpses of spiritual reality feel very few and far between. What is it that we need to learn? What can we be doing better? Well, that's a question that another group of Jesus followers asked. The book of Matthew tells us that at one point several disciples came to Jesus and inquired, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And Matthew continues, "And Jesus called a little child unto him and set him in the midst of them and said, Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." Now, what were the disciples really asking here? It's possible that they were wondering about some kind of heavenly hierarchy and which of them would come out on top. But I wonder if after watching Jesus heal multitudes, raise the dead, and even control the weather, they wanted to know what kind of person would be most successful in emulating him. What attributes or qualities did they need to be really great at demonstrating the truth of being? The Master's response might have surprised them. He didn't advocate strength or courage or power. He recommended the opposite, childlikeness. Now, I know that most of us have read this passage a million times, but I want to really examine it today. Why did Jesus specify this particular quality over all others? What is it about a childlike thought that enables us to perceive the kingdom of heaven? And Mrs. Eddy knew. She wrote, "Willingness to become as a little child and to leave the old for the new renders thought receptive of the advanced idea." It's the receptivity, it's the openness. Have you ever wondered why little ones are so open, so curious and fearless, joyous and free? Of course, in many ways it's just their nature, but I believe there's another reason why they're able to express these qualities so readily and so consistently. That reason is trust. The trust that is instilled in them before they become little children, when they're still babies. So let's think about this. For the first year or so, infants are bathed in the sweetest, most attentive love and care. All of those late night feedings curled up in a parent's arms, gentle baths in just the right temperature water, diapers changed, fingernails trimmed, every need is met, every hurt soothed, every step of progress encouraged and celebrated. So by the time those babies have become little children, they've developed an unshakable trust in their loving, constant, caregiving parents. They know how secure they are and how much they're loved because they know their parents and they understand the nature of their relationship with them. Couldn't this be what Jesus was advocating? For us to understand our divine parent and our connection to him so well that we can put aside fear, doubt, or self-will and allow the reign of harmony to be expressed, to trust so completely in God's care for us, for all of his creation, that the idea of anyone being lost or separated or out of reach of that love, even for a moment, seems preposterous. The Bible describes God as a mama bird who stirreth up her nest and fluttereth over her young. Well, folks, those little birds are us. Understanding, really understanding this, opens our thought to spiritual reality. So what is it that would try to prevent us from embracing this childlike trust and receptivity? Ignorance or complacency? Fear? A desire for control? Because of these temptations, we often continue down a mortal path until we finally find ourselves at a dead end. Only then do we say, "Okay, Father, I'm out of ideas. I guess I'll let you take over." Mrs. Eddy writes, "The sharp experiences of belief in the supposititious life of matter, as well as our disappointments and ceaseless woes, turn us like tired children to the arms of divine love. Then we begin to learn life in divine science." I would like to share some wonderful examples of receptive thought that resulted in profound new views of spiritual reality. The first involves someone who was new to Christian Science, which means it was a case of ignorance, for which the solution is a childlike willingness to learn. Think about how much little children learn on a daily basis. Their education is constant. And they don't resist learning, they embrace it. That enthusiastic engagement in moving forward with an expectation of good, that's the outlook that leads to spiritual growth and through that growth to healing. This particular woman had struggled her entire life with a tyrannical parent. The parent was so nasty and controlling that my friend spent a good part of her early years trying to figure out how to get away, just to be free from this oppressive presence. But as she progressed in her study of Christian Science, it became clear that a change in circumstance was never going to fix the problem. My friend needed a change in thought. She wrestled with this issue over the course of many years. It was not a quick or easy process, but as she endeavored to relinquish the false sense of life and lineage that she had been raised with, and to grow in her understanding of the true parent-child relationship, she had 3 significant insights. The first involved spiritual discernment. She realized that she'd accepted the false burden of making this individual happy and discerned that in point of fact, this individual didn't want to be happy. My friend had taken on a task that was literally impossible. But more than that, she saw that we can never bring lasting peace to mortal mind through human activity. That was a false model, and she needed to let it go. Next, she came to see that she had accepted a sense of obligation to this individual because of their human relationship. It felt unloving not to be a dutiful daughter. But one day, as she was pondering alertness to duty from the church manual, she thought about the sequence it laid out. Love God, love the teachings, love mankind. She realized that you can't love man first and then fit God into that somehow. You actually can't love anyone without loving God first, because God is love. And in order to live that love, you first have to love God. Love God, love the teachings, love mankind. That's the sequence. That's our whole duty. And then finally one day it dawned on my friend that while she had spent years endeavoring to see herself as having no mortal history, as coexistent and eternal with God, she had never claimed that truth for her parent. In that moment, she caught a clear glimpse of the reality of the situation, that neither of them had ever been mortal, that both of them had always shared the same father-mother, and that any suggestion otherwise was merely a dream with no basis in reality. At that moment, my friend recognized that she didn't need to be released from a flawed relationship because no such relationship had ever existed. You may be able to guess how that story ended. Within weeks of this final insight, my friend was completely released from that relationship, permanently, and without any effort on her part. In her message to the Mother Church for 1902, Mrs. Eddy wrote, "Christ Jesus reckoned man in science, having the kingdom of heaven within him. He spake of man not as the offspring of Adam, a departure from God or his lost likeness, but as God's child." She goes on to say, "Spiritual love makes man conscious that God is his Father, and the consciousness of God as love gives man power with untold furtherance." Isn't that wonderful? That's what happened with my friend. She perceived that God was her Father and that God is love, and this understanding brought untold power. Power that simply lifted her right out of that situation. But it all started with her willingness to learn, to dig in and root out any entrenched beliefs about life and matter, no matter how long that took. My next example of the effect of childlike thought involves fear. And it brings to mind John's assertion that the antidote to fear is perfect love. Really, doesn't all fear spring from the false belief that we can be separated from God? And when, like a little child, we turn to our Father, Mother, and realize that He hasn't gone anywhere, the fear dissipates. Mrs. Eddy says, "This is the doctrine of Christian Science, that divine love cannot be deprived of its manifestation or object." She doesn't say that we can't be deprived of divine love, although that also happens to be true. She says that God cannot be deprived of us. Think of that. Being separated from God would constitute deprivation for God. That's how much He loves us. The one and only trick that fear holds in its bag is to try to convince us that we can be removed from God's care. But a childlike appeal to divine love brings reassurance from our ever-present parent that exposes that argument as a bald-faced lie. Then the fear dissolves into its native nothingness. take this experience, which a friend recently shared with me. My wife and I were both raised in Christian Science and had been accustomed to relying on prayer for physical challenges. But when we were expecting our first child, I found myself uncertain about doing the same for our kids. I wanted to be a conscientious parent, and frankly, the idea of being wholly responsible for a little creature's health and ultimately life frightened me. I didn't see any harm in checking in with a pediatrician every now and then to make sure we were doing everything right. So when we took our son to a medical checkup 3 days after he was born, my wife and I were approaching it from very different viewpoints. She believed we were merely fulfilling the terms of agreement with our midwife, who required the visit in her contract. I, on the other hand, was thinking it might be the first of many such visits. The 2 preceding days of before this appointment had been blissful. The most wonderful Christian Science nurse had helped us settle into the new demands of parenting after our son's home birth, and we spent the time basking in God's love for us and in our love for this beautiful little boy. But at the doctor's office, that peaceful idyll was shattered. An angry rash had appeared out of nowhere, and it now covered most of his body. The pediatrician was alarmed. There were 2 possibilities, he said. Either it was an uncomfortable but harmless condition that would clear up in a week or 2, and he felt that this was more likely, however, that it was evidence of a serious infection that could threaten our son's life. The next 48 hours would tell us which one it was. The doctor knew that we were Christian Scientists, but asked if we would be willing to wash the baby with a special soap and monitor his temperature throughout the night. We were terrified. My wife agreed to the doctor's requests out of deference to me, but called a Christian Science practitioner as soon as we got home. I tried to pray, but found myself unable to think straight. The rest of that day and night was awful. Our little family, which had been so peaceful and happy, was now miserable. Like most newborns, our son hated being stripped and scrubbed and protested mightily at having his temperature taken. And my wife and I were a wreck. When morning came, our son's condition had not changed. My wife dutifully gave him another bath, which he cried all the way through. By the time it was done, she came to me in tears and told me she couldn't continue with the doctor's instructions. My wife noted that the practitioner's first words upon hearing about the situation had been, "That child is perfect." Why, my wife asked me, would we choose the approach that offers us 2 imperfect options, discomfort or death, when Christian Science is offering only 1, perfection? Why would we choose anything less but perfection for our son? At that moment, I totally got it, and my fear evaporated. I'd had such wonderful healings myself. Why wouldn't I want the same for my child? We threw away the special soap, put away the thermometer, and went back to basking in the embrace of God's love. The next time we changed our son's diaper, the rash had disappeared, vanished. He was indeed perfect. Later, when I asked my wife how she had prayed during that difficult time, she said that it was challenging. She'd clung to the phrase, "Be still and know that I am God," until she was gradually able to consider what it meant. that God was the father of all three of us, that he was this baby's parent, not us, and that he was ever present and all-powerful. Eventually, she was able to recognize that the only thing that had infected our family was fear, and that was really what needed to be handled, not any physical condition. Once she saw that, how fear was trying to trick us, the lie was exposed and the healing came quickly. Now later, that wife had told me that she'd shared this story with a friend who was curious about Christian Science and wanted an example of a physical healing. The wife chose this experience because she felt it was such a clear-cut case of a healing that defied a doctor's understanding, and because the doctor was astonished. And do you know how her friend responded? Oh, well, it must have been something he hadn't thought of. How many of us have had a conversation like that, where a person simply couldn't wrap their head around the idea of spiritual healing? Could that be why the disciples didn't initially recognize Jesus after the resurrection? Because resurrection was something they simply couldn't conceive of. So often the unfoldment of good from God is so much bigger and better and more precise than anything the human mind could ever imagine. But when we rise higher in thought, the answer that was always there becomes apparent. Now we see this throughout the Bible. From the Old Testament on, God's answers are so much more amazing than what would have been written humanly as a success story. And so we can't judge our success by human standards. Because human standards will always fall short, they will never pave the way to the kingdom of heaven, the reign of harmony in divine science. This leads me to my third and final story for today. An example of childlike willingness to let go of control and trust that God knows what we need before we ask Him. You know, little children have no sense of time. They live in the now. They assume that their parents have all the basics, food, clothing, shelter, under control, which means they don't have to worry about them. And when we adopt that attitude, trusting our father, mother, without needing to know what His plan is going to look like, we receive that power with untold furtherance. Mrs. Eddy writes, "We own no past nor future. We possess only now. Faith in divine love supplies the ever-present help and now, and gives the power to act in the living present." I just want to note here that this is exactly what a Christian Science nurse endeavors to do, to see the patient as having no mortal past, present, or future, but as residing in the wholeness of the living present, in the power and presence of divine living love. But back to my story. The husband of a friend of mine had been ill for some time, and his inability to work eventually left the family without any resources. The lease on their house was up, and at the end of the month, they were unable to renew it. With no cash for groceries and their credit ruined, the wife honestly had no idea where the family would go. But she'd seen enough demonstrations of supply that she was mostly able not to panic and to trust that God had a plan. She prayed daily with the idea that she and her family forever lived in the house of the Lord without interruption. She endeavored to take one step at a time and let God be in charge of their future. At one point, a fellow Christian Scientist told my friend that she'd once known a man in similar circumstances who, after much humble prayer, was offered the opportunity to live rent-free as a caretaker in a mansion. A mansion, she exclaimed. I don't really see a mansion in our future, my friend thought, but I'm sure God will figure something out. Several weeks before the family had to move out of their home, an acquaintance, the mother of one of their daughter's friends, offered to let them stay at her house while they sorted out their next move. My friend didn't really consider that offer until about a week before their lease ended, when it became clear that there was nowhere else to go. So she called the woman and asked if they could, in fact, stay with her family for a couple of weeks. Here's how my friend described what happened next. This family was not particularly well off, so it was kind of amazing to me that they were willing to accommodate all of us. We were a family of 4 with pets, and they had only 1 extra bedroom. But we all piled into that house with my husband and me on a pull-out sofa. And then this miraculous thing happened. It was perfect. We all hit it off like we'd known each other forever. In the whole time that we were there, and we ended up living with them for almost a year, there was not one disagreement, not one moment of tension, not one issue of any kind between any of the 8 humans, 1 dog, a cat, and 2 rodents living in that house. In fact, we all really enjoyed each other. And by the way, these people who took them in were not Christian Scientists. The blessings were universal. My very social husband, who had been unable to get out much during this period, had ready-made companionship right in the house. I was able to be there for him at a time when he needed a good deal of support because my housekeeping responsibilities had been cut in half. I was also able to help the wife with some tasks that she was unable to do by herself, which proved to be very meaningful to her. And the husband was immensely grateful for the modest amount of money we were able to contribute to the household, which ended up being a net gain for their family at a time when they were struggling. At one point, about halfway through the year, I thought about how, from the outside, through a mortal lens, our situation could seem pitiable. Parents of teenagers who couldn't afford a place to live, staying with virtual strangers and sleeping on a pull-out sofa while one of them wrestled with a physical challenge. And it almost made me laugh because through a spiritual lens, this was turning out to be a holy experience. I was seeing a kind of spiritual beauty that a mortal view would never understand, because I knew that God was behind all of it. Wow, I thought, talk about rejoicing and secret beauty and bounty, hidden from the world but known to God. I remembered the mansion that caretaker had moved into, and immediately thought, in my father's house are many mansions. This little house filled with people genuinely felt like a mansion because it was exactly what we needed at this particular time in our lives, and I never would have imagined it. Don't experiences like this make us think of that line from Science and Health? Can God furnish a table in the wilderness? What cannot God do? Today we've heard about people who've witnessed the reign of harmony in divine science, the kingdom of heaven here on earth, in areas as varied as relationships, supply, and physical challenges. What they all have in common is the individual's willingness to embrace a childlike thought, to let go of fear, willfulness, and outmoded beliefs, and put their trust in the divine Father, Mother to care for and guide them, to learn more about their indissoluble connection to infinite, omnipresent love. This is something we can all do right now, today. We can put aside any false belief of inertia or complacency and move forward in our true life purpose to perceive and experience the kingdom of God and His righteousness. We can leave the old for the new and rejoice in the perpetual progress that Mrs. Eddy calls the law of God. This is our reason for being. To think that our purpose is an earthbound niche or career defined by time is a mistake that will limit our life work. God is in charge of our life work, and its progress is perpetual. This is the new birth going on hourly, continually. There is no beginning, no end, no stagnation, no inaction. There is only the infinite idea forever developing itself. As Mrs. Eddy tells us, broadening and rising higher and higher from a boundless basis. And we see that idea in proportion to our understanding of the love of God, of the parent-child relationship that forms the bedrock of our experience. I find it noteworthy that Mrs. Eddy's last words in Science and Health, that's before the glossary, were words that sum up the essence of Christian Science. They are a description of this relationship. Replacing the word Lord with divine love in the 23rd Psalm, she says, communicates the true nature of God, our divine parent, and of God's solicitous care of us as His offspring. Let's listen to it together. Divine love is my shepherd, I shall not want. Love maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Love leadeth me beside the still waters. Love restoreth my soul, spiritual sense. Love leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for love is with me. Love's rod and love's staff, they comfort me. Love prepareth a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Love anointeth my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house, the consciousness of love forever. Thank you.
to end our spiritual feast, the Feast of Goodies, and great food from HRH House. But before we get there, I just want to recognize all the wonderful people that helped us make this happen. Our wonderful team at HRH House. Let me recognize our Interim Director of Christian Science Nursing, Sandy Efron. Please stand or wave, Sandy. Our Director of Christian Science Nursing in Training, Rose Mudida. Our Innkeeping Director, Viviana Echevarria. Our Head of Housekeeping, Elsa Echevarria. Head of our Maintenance, Jim O'Reilly. Where are you, Jim? Way in the back. And our head of our food service, but I can see some of our folks from food service in the back. Is Miss Hattie around? Hattie's been with us for over 40 years. So please come meet them. We will have a reception line for everybody to meet and greet our Christian Science nurses, and our staff will be giving these special gifts to honor all our Christian Science nurses today. So thank you for celebrating with us, and please enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.